We need to talk about the future of Stadia, and this is mainly from a brand new article that just dropped over at Business Insider, right on the heels about the news of Google confirming 100 games coming to the platform this year. Before I begin, I do need to point out that this information is all being gathered by Business Insider and it's coming from their own inside sources. I have no way of vetting whether or not these are facts or not, but if I'm being perfectly honest, I do believe what's being said here. It tends to make a lot of sense, and I think a lot of us have been seeing this coming for some time now. Google Stadia as a consumer platform will continue to push on, and there's no plans of killing it, but it's no longer the main focus for Google. Instead, that focus is on Google Stream, which is a white label service that uses Stadia's underlying technology that can be sold to partners and then branded under a new name. And we already have an example of this happening between Google and AT&T to make Batman Arkham Knight streamable to their customers. What we didn't know is that Google's already entered conversations with Peloton, a fitness bike company, and they're already using it for one of their titles called Lane Break. And that's not the only talks that were going around either. There were two more, the first of which revolved around Bungie, the developer of the Destiny franchise, who was apparently exploring a streaming platform of its own. And according to 3 people who were familiar with those discussions, Bungie would have owned the content and controlled the front-end experience, but Google would power the technology that beamed games to users. But as many of you are aware, Sony recently purchased Bungie, so who knows if those talks are still ongoing and how it affects everything else, considering Sony's actually partnered with Microsoft Azure for their cloud gaming solution. Lastly, there were talks with Capcom, who would be interested in running demos for new titles on its website powered by Google's tech. If you ask me, I'm actually really happy to see that companies are interested in using Stadia's tech because it really is fantastic stuff. That being said, there are a ton of downsides for those who are currently playing on Stadia and wanted to see it succeed in a big way. According to current and former employees, they stated that the priority was now on proof of concept work for Google Stream and securing white label deals. One estimated about 20% of the focus was on the consumer platform. According to the article, that's because Google struggled to hold on to its users. Harrison and the other executives set a goal to reach 1 million monthly active users by the end of 2020, which they missed by about 25%. And when in early 2020, Microsoft announced that they were going to be acquiring Bethesda Game Studios, according to a former employee, it simply scared the crap out of Google executives. And once Stadia Games and Entertainment shut down, Google was no longer interested in purchasing any studios. I can only imagine if talks ended back in 2020 about this sort of thing, they're probably not ongoing whatsoever right now, especially with the huge acquisitions of Activision Blizzard by Microsoft and Bungie by Sony, especially when we know both are still interested in purchasing more, not to mention EA Games has also stated they're now looking for purchases as well. It's become very clear, very fast, that it's going to take a lot of money to break into the video games industry. Even Facebook, who's found some success with the Meta Quest 2, has reported a huge loss this year in revenue. And that's kind of the ongoings of getting into the games industry. They had to buy some studios, had to pour money into research and development, marketing, and much more. And based on the sounds of it, I doubt they're going to be slowing down on pouring more and more billions of dollars before it actually starts to turn a real healthy profit. By white labeling Stadia, I'm sure Google is hoping to actually turn profit much sooner than that. There's simply more money to be made there, and you can operate on a profit rather than a loss without having to heavily invest in partnerships and deals to get your business going. Once again, also worth pointing out that they're not actually shutting Stadia down. They did just announce 100 games coming to the platform this year, but you should definitely be tempering your expectations for what type of titles we may see. If what the article is saying is true and that Stadia is only 20% of the focus now, you can assure yourself that funding has been cut for third-party deals. It may also explain why we haven't seen a Stadia Connect or any sort of big marketing push in quite some time, and why they're announcing only 100 games for this year, much like last year. I think many of us in the community were kind of expecting a little bit more than that just to see some growth. Oh, and a quick update on Phil Harrison. He's moved back to his home in London and has been in California since 2018 working at Google's Mountain View headquarters. Personally, I don't think this is too big of a deal, especially with the current state of the world, but what I do think is worth noting is that he used to report to the Devices and Service Chief over at Google and now reports to Google's Vice President of Subscription Services. Kind of curious myself if this is one of the reasons why Stadia Pro's offering offerings as of late have been much improved. But now let me share a few of my own thoughts about the article. As I stated in the beginning, I tend to believe what's being said here, but some of the writing in the article itself definitely makes it feel like more of a hit piece, and that's not too surprising considering where it's coming from. From my understanding, Business Insider tends to have a younger demographic, and thus they kinda are like the BuzzFeed of the news world. But that's not to say that they're unreliable. They have dropped a ton of news in the past, and genuinely speaking, I do think Stadia is going to continue to keep going. But my personal advice is that if you're a core gamer, you should definitely be tempering your expectations on what to expect this year. If the 100+ games we got last year didn't satisfy your appetite for gaming, well, I doubt that's going to be changing anytime soon. I expect this year to play out very much so the same way last year did. You'll probably get a few big names here and there, but the majority are going to be indie games. That or older ports of popular existing titles as well as Ubisoft's titles that do appear day one. What I'm extremely curious about this year though is whether or not we end up seeing EA's popular sports franchises make it again. They made it clear that it was a 5-game deal and all those 5 games have launched, so whatever comes next is kind of up in the air. Talking about myself here, Stadia doesn't satisfy all my gaming needs. It's why I still have a gaming PC, some next-gen consoles, and use other cloud gaming services. A lot of the bigger games I play simply aren't on Stadia, and most of those titles probably won't be getting brought over to Stadia, especially with this news, if it's all true. But regardless, it doesn't mean I'm gonna stop using Stadia either. I think Stadia Pro is a good value, and I love checking out all the new Pro games as soon as they drop, as well as any interesting title that ends up being on the store. I love cloud gaming, and Stadia still tends to be one of the better experiences out there, period. And since I don't need to pay for it or actively be paying for anything I don't want, it can kind of coexist with every other platform I use. For some out there, it may be just enough to fulfill all their gaming needs. I'm not in that use case, but I'm happy for them. But for those that were hoping that Stadia might grow to rival Sony or Microsoft head-on anytime soon, it's probably time you change that expectation and possibly look elsewhere. Even if Stadia does end up getting to that point and they push it along far enough, it should be clear now that it's gonna take some time to even get there. But it's important to once again point out that's only if you believe what this article is stating as true. Inside sources, after all, cannot be fact-checked. But what I will say to Google directly is that if a lot of this isn't true, now is the time you come out and make that very clear. In fact, I'd go as far to say that there's never been a more important time to make sure you do this. Personally, once again, I believe the article, I think it's true, I do think it's a bit of a hit piece, but I think overall the facts are there. I've talked about it as much in previous videos that I thought Google would be pivoting it to a white label service, and I genuinely do believe that's the right call to make here. Save the Stadia technology, keep pushing Stadia along as you have, and hopefully, maybe along that path, Stadia will turn a reasonable profit, enough for Google to be interested in actually investing more into it. I genuinely think it would be a huge shame for them to just shut the whole project down considering how good the back-end technology really is there. And with that, we wrap up my thoughts, but I want to hear yours, so be sure to leave them down in the comment section below. Do you think this is good or bad? Do you think the article is true or false? Let me know what your thoughts are, and if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful at all, be sure to hit that like button as it really does help the channel out, and if you're wanting more content like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell as well. As always, thanks for watching. This has been The Virtual Cloud, giving you the latest and greatest on everything cloud gaming and VR related, and until next time, I'll catch you in the clouds.